Now that we have our box fabricated, one of the things that we're running into is that we have to mount this to the bumper. Now, I don't want to weld on the bumper because it could potentially ruin the chrome, and I don't want to put screws through and sandwich it, which could potentially crack the lens. So this is basically a basic representation of the lens. So the box will go like this, and the lens goes over top. And from the factory, these boxes were made out of resin, and the screws would go into it and kind of hold it in there. There was a lip on here that would clip into the bumper, and we can't do that. This is pretty heavy compared to what the resin was. So I drew a basic square, basically how big this is, and it's a little bit bigger than what it needs to be because I want to give it some room that we can grind it out and fit it a little bit and have a little bit of meat on there. But it is a 1/2 inch wider all the way around than what this box is. And what I'm going to use is some panel adhesive, and that panel adhesive, all you need is a really clean surface that's slightly scuffed up, and clamp it overnight. And I made some hubcaps a few years ago with a beauty ring and then a Cadillac sombrero, and I drove that car at 80 miles an hour all over the place and never had an issue with the hubcaps coming off. So we're going to do that, and now that I have it all laid out, we're going to cut it out, try to fit it to the box, and go from there. We're going to get a basic idea of this, kind of in the middle. So you can see I drew some lines on here. We're going to cut it out with the razor blade, sort of trim to fit. Now, because this is a curved surface, it was relatively difficult to try and make a pattern for it. So when I put my piece on, you can see these pieces of tape that I put on here to try and fill the corners. And we'll be going off of those corners. The next thing I need to do is make sure that this is 1/2 inch all the way along this line here. So it looks like I probably have too much here and not enough here. So I'll cut it all the way across here where it's supposed to be 1/2 inch, then add some tape, and then we should be able to have our pattern that we can trace on. And down here is a little bit too wide too, and we'll make sure that we round off our corners and stuff. And I chose a 1/2 inch because we want to make sure that we have enough that we can clamp it from in behind onto the bumper. 1 inch is probably too much, and I don't know if I have that much material. And then 1/4 inch is definitely not enough, so we want to make sure that our epoxy is going to go along this edge and we can clamp it. Now I've taken our templates at this point and marked them out onto our 18 gauge sheet metal with a Sharpie. Starting by cutting out the middles of our braces and then moving to the outside. Now, what I'm doing here, I wouldn't exactly recommend because I don't have the guard on my angle grinder. I would recommend definitely having your guard on. I've just gotten used to working this way, but I've always gotten good results. I've got a few scars on my knuckles from not necessarily this one, but I've skinned myself a couple times using this. Once I have these marked out, then I've taken a 90-degree die grinder with 36 grit and shaped them to my final shape and got them ready to form onto the actual light box itself. Now we've got our pieces cut out, our next move is to try and fit them to the box that we have. I'm only going to do one box at a time and just tack it so that I can form it I don't have the car here right now. It was having some transmission problems and it's in the shop. So I'm just gonna go as far as tacking it, and we'll leave it there until I can get the car back. We're starting to make a little bit of headway. I worked on this a little bit out of camera because I wanted to try and experiment a little bit. I wanted to make some stands that you didn't really see when you screwed the lens to it. So you can see right here, I kind of welded around and then I sort of blended the weld back a little bit. And what these are just a stainless steel wing nut that I cut one of the tabs off of and then welded it in place. To weld this in place, I had a little brace for my garage door opener, and I basically had this tightened down. I've got all kinds of these spring clamps left over from when I did some fender welting on another car. To give you an idea of what I did there. And then I know this way that it's going to be flat against the rest of the housing, and then tack it in place. And these are going to be probably 1/4 of an inch out from where the little pocket is on the light itself. So you shouldn't really see this part in there. Shouldn't really see that part in there, which I kind of wanted to avoid. I didn't want to have a big tab coming out that would kind of block the whole thing, because the screw head should kind of cover this anyway, so you can see from there. So we're working on the second side here, and I want to make sure that these lens bolts are in the same spot for when this one goes in. So I marked our center line here and made sure that it corresponded with these screws here, and I was very close. And this here will be the center line of our wing nuts that we're going to weld in, just so that we're centered and we're also the same distance from the edge on the inside on each one. So the next step that I'm going to do is I'm going to take these wing nuts, and off of the edge on here we're going to shave just a little bit, and we're going to put this back into our jig and make sure that everything fits nice and square into it. And here's what I was talking about with our little jig. Here's my little clamps on here. You can see that this center of this lines up exactly with that. And now, because I made my marks that were on here before, I was able to measure off of the edge of here to the center of here, so I know this is going to be in the exact same spot as what it is in the other one.
What I'm doing here is adding some really big tacks, letting it cool while it's in the jig, removing the jig, then finish welding it. Once it's finished welded, then I can grind and sand the weld so that it matches the other side.
Now we've got our lens pockets completed. They're about as even as they're going to get. The next thing I'm going to move on to is building the lenses for them. So if you enjoy hanging out with me, you'll enjoy hanging out with my buddy Andrew Grenon. He is building a really bitchin' traditional style tea bucket. You can find him on my featured pages on my homepage under Andy G's Garage. And he's also Andy G's Garage on Instagram as well. Make sure you like, subscribe, and follow him as well, because he's building some really cool stuff. And we've been talking about getting together and doing a collaboration, helping each other out a little bit. I know I could use the help, he could use the help, and we could also use the help of the people from YouTube liking and subscribing our stuff, because that helps us make better videos and bring more awesome content for you guys. And it helps you guys be involved with us too. We want all you guys to be involved in these builds, so check us out and let's have some fun out in the garage. I'll catch you guys later.